are housed, but this is our guy, man. This is Krug. Sat by him during the game, had a great time pre- and post-game with Krug yesterday. Check out the Krug Show, which I believe just went over 50,000 subscribers. Way to go, Krug. Congratulations on that. And, of course, you hear him here and see him on YouTube. And make sure that you're checking it out when he does Niners Nightly, which is every night at 6 o'clock, or weeknights at 6 o'clock. So make sure you tune in for Krug with that. He's all over. And he's with us right now, courtesy of the Uma Gasoline. And if you're on YouTube and Twitch, you can see Krug in the flesh. In the flesh. What's happening?
Man, just finishing watching the rewatch after a late night. And it's funny. You watch a game the first time, you get one impression. You watch it a second time, you get a different impression. I was somewhat disappointed in a lot of the struggles to finish out the game last night. And upon the rewatch, I'm very, very impressed by Brock Purdy's mobility in this game. I thought Purdy ran expertly in this game a number of times. Sometimes because he had to, because the play broke down or wasn't the right play. He did that one time. Sometimes it was just they gave him an avenue and he took it. Sometimes they're playing man and they turned their head and he took off. But I thought they wouldn't have won this game the way they won it last night without Brock's legs.
And all year, Brock Purdy has 15 first downs on quarterback scrambles this season, tied with Jaden Daniels for the most in the NFL. So he has more than Lamar. He has more than Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's incredible. I think in his Brock's legs, the use of Kittle over the middle to attack them, and Isaac Guerendo, Larry. And I want to get your scouts' eyes on Guerendo. I thought the runs he had late in the first half, the 19-yarder, the 15-yarder, he was just coming off the ball much quicker than J.P. Mason. He was hitting it. I love his ball security, high and tight. He caught a few balls where Brock was a little wide on checkdowns to him that he went out of the framework of his body. He's learning, I think he's better pressing it play side than cutting it back. So what do you see from Guerendo? Kyle did say Mason could come back into the game. I'm not sure about that. And I think we're going to get McCaffrey back in practice a week from today. So as you look at the running back room, and I know you guys were talking before the year started, you got to back off the carries for McCaffrey. You got to get J.P. Mason more involved. What can Guerendo give us? So now, with CMC missing the first half of the year, coming off a terrible injury, how do you want to see them divvy up RB 1, 2, and 3?
It's a very interesting question because last year Kyle wanted to start with McCaffrey and finish with Mitchell. And he really liked finishing with Mitchell. And I talked to him about it once, and he's like, Mitchell doesn't fumble. Mitchell gets every yard he can possibly get. There are no negative runs. He really loves finishing with Mitchell. I think they're going to love finishing with Guerendo because guys take bad angles. And one thing that Kyle commented on in the post game is that this player continues to get better and better and better. He says he feels like he learns from every single carry. And we're seeing it. I mean, like giving you an example. In the first half, there was a run where he looked like a classic Guerendo raw running back. He ran up on his own player, bumped into him, got knocked to the ground, and that was it, right? And you're looking at that going, whoa, there's no feel, there's no instincts. Okay, but you know what? Then you see him get to that second level, as you said, hit the hole hard. The one thing about he hits the hole much harder than Mason. So he's going full tilt. What I love about him is that he's got that kind of athleticism where he is 2 steps at full speed. So he's got a great jetpack on him right now, and he's a guy that if you can spring him through to the second level, guys will take bad angles, and if you can get him into that third level, nobody wants to get in front of this guy as he's running at that rate of speed at that weight. So he's a force. He's a force. I do think he's still kind of raw, but I think he's an ideal finishing second half back because you're thinking one speed, and here comes a faster guy who's bigger, and all it takes is one bad angle or one bad angle, one poor breakdown, and suddenly you've got a gigantic play. I thought he gave this team a huge lift. Where was it? Second quarter where he went 30-yard run, like 18-yard run, and then they tossed it to him on the halfback toss.
Back-to-back.
Yeah, 15-19.
Yeah.
Right before halftime.
He also had a nice catch right after that little series. So yeah, there was a nice little run there for Guerendo. He gave them a huge shot in the arm.
Larry Krueger joining us. Remember, Niners Nightly tonight at 6 o'clock at Sports Larry K. The Krug Show as well. Make sure that you're checking everything out. The Krug pumping out a bunch of great stuff on the Niners and other things as well. In regards to McCaffrey and how big of a boost he'll give, we were just talking about Guerendo, and I think that regardless of bringing McCaffrey back, these guys have earned roles, and plus you don't want to overuse McCaffrey, especially coming back from this injury. But does he solve all offensive woes if and when he returns against Tampa after the bye?
I think he helps them quite a bit in the red zone, obviously. I don't know that he solves all of their offensive woes because they still really could use another receiver that could replace Ayuk on some of those downfield patterns that Ayuk runs that the Niners don't have lots of options. I mean, you could lean on Cowing, and Cowing gets separation vertically, but he is a smaller guy. He is a rookie. He's a receiver. Rookie receivers often struggle. I think if John could find, I'm not saying a star receiver, but if he could find a Darius Slayton, if he could find somebody who would complement the rest of this receiving core, I think and it wouldn't cost him a lot. I think he would consider doing that.
All right, the bust in the second half on CD, and the second touchdown, the safety, Jair Brown just ran into Renardo and picked him off. What the hell happened on the first touchdown where they had 3 or 4 receivers left, and it looked like the Niners manned those guys, and then CD was singled up right. He just runs a shallow cross. No one follows him at all. No one widens it out. Was that a man that Malik Mustafa, I think, may have gotten picked off? What happened on CeeDee Lamb's first touchdown?
I thought it was first of all, it was a busted play, obviously. I mean, that's not Nick Sorensen's intent to have the Cowboys' number one receiver literally nobody within 25 yards of him in the end zone. I thought it was a man play and there was a pick. Now, he started on the defensive left and caught it all the way on the defensive right. But he ran unimpeded and unaccompanied for most of his route. So there was a pick early, obviously, that freed him up, and then it was just he was beyond wide open. I mean, there was nobody in the television screen, and it was one of the worst busts I've seen in the red zone from any team all year. As far as space creation, I haven't seen that much wide open space in the red zone for any team all year.
Well, the second one, he was even more open. Both of them, he was wide open on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Johnny.
No, go ahead. I'll ask.
No, I was just going to say that it almost felt like 2 games. It almost felt like the Niners won the game, and then that kind of felt like almost the aftermath of the win. But yeah, they got to finish. Again, against better teams, the margins will be tighter. They're going to have to finish in a more efficient manner than on both sides of the ball than they did in this game.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about because they basically played one great quarter of football, outscored the Cowboys 21-0, and then that was kind of it. And you and I were talking about this when we were up in the booth. People started leaving the game. Energy just kind of deflated out of the stadium, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, the Cowboys have the ball. There's 3:05 left, and they're only down 6. And we're kind of like, man, we've seen this defense do this so many times, but I don't think the Cowboys just had the horses to get it done. But it is a concern. You obviously lost to the Rams and the Cardinals. You let up a little bit against Seattle. You let up in this game. Is there a finishing problem on this team?
I mean, John Lynch said at the end of last year, we need finishers. And it's kind of what is a finisher? I don't know. It's somebody that finishes games and wins big games. I mean, to me, the one play that we're not talking about today that I think about when I did the rewatch is the Purdy pass/fumble that Aaron Banks fell on. That was a huge play. That was an absolutely huge play. He also had a pass that was nearly deflected and could have been a pick 6 in the fourth quarter.
That was on him, by the way. You got to get that ball out of your hand. If it's not there, he held on to that ball too long. That's on him.
Why didn't
Mooney
they
had a
run
rough-
it? It was 3rd and 1. Run the ball in
Yeah,
that
exactly.
situation.
Run the ball first, but yeah.
I would have run it
I
there.
agree with you.
Well, he got stuffed on 2nd and 1. That's why he threw it.
Mooney had a rough game, I thought, against Tolbert. He had the PI against Tolbert. That was painful. He also had a PI, I believe, earlier in the game. Mooney made some really good. I would say one thing that really stood out upon the rewatch is that Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, the Niners, Darrell Luter on special teams made a nice play. Some of those Niner young DBs are really coming of age. I mean, you're seeing these. We're watching these guys grow up right before our eyes. I mean, if you look at the leading tacklers, you had Fred and Campbell, but you also had Ward, Lenore, Brown, Mustafa, Green. I mean, these guys were all right there among the league leaders or among the Niners leaders and tackles last night. So the young defensive backs are starting to play. I also, upon the rewatch, thought Jordan Elliott played well in the middle. It seemed like Jordan Elliott made a number of big plays in the middle. And Sam Aquinu, I asked Bosa about it. In their pass rush, they're going to the NASCAR package, and they're using Sam as an interior defensive tackle, and they're not even putting him with his hand in the ground. They're letting him stand up in the hole, and they're playing games off of it. And I thought that bothered Dallas's offensive line in the second half.
You mentioned Charvarius. He was off the field, interestingly, in the fourth quarter for 4 snaps. And they brought in Ike Adam to play his side, and Renardo Green was playing the other side and Demo in the slot. And I was watching Charvarius. He was not being checked by the performance staff. He was not under the blue tent. He looked fine. Maybe he needed a playoff or not. You mentioned they went at him a little bit. He had a couple of calls against him. Mike Silver and a few of the other writers think it's possible that the Niners trade Charvarius Ward between now and a week from tomorrow. His contract is up. Are you going to re-sign him? If you do that, are you confident enough in Renardo Green, Ike Adam, Diamador Lenore, then the backups would be Darrell Luter Jr., Rock Yassin. Do you see them, and we've been talking about them adding, and I think they will on the D-line for sure, or try to. Do you think just because as you look at the cap next year, they would be open to trading Charvarius?
Yeah, I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. And this name's been mentioned a few times. I just think that they're looking very realistically at their roster, Greg, and we all know they weren't going to be able to retain Lenore and Mooney. Lenore has officially won that battle, right? So they're going to try to retain Lenore long term. So I think they look at Mooney as a guy that, with Purdy's contract looming, he's going to be a cap casualty. And I think they also feel like they've got guys in-house that can do maybe not as good, but close. There's probably also guys that they could acquire via trade that they could probably acquire pretty cheaply. And I think they're looking at Mooney and saying, wait a second, there's a team out there that will give us a day 2 pick. I think there's a chance there might be a team that would give them a 3rd-round pick for Mooney Ward. I mean, you got to remember, corners, when you run out of corners, you're cooked. And you really have to. They're not just hanging around. It's like left tackles or right tackles. They're not just hanging around on the street. So if you're a contender and you're down a corner, and there's a couple of them that are, Mooney would look very attractive. And for the 49ers, you're just moving away from a player a couple weeks early and gaining draft pick compensation for a player that that you're going to have to offload in the offseason for sure, and that you won't be able to resign. So I think it makes sense. But it also kind of speaks to his regression and also the quality of their depth at that spot. I think they feel good about the guys they have. Like, I think they feel like Rock Ya-Sin could play for them if they needed him to.
What do you got going tonight, Krug?
The first game, 49er show, Niner Nightly on a Monday after some of these games. I like to let the fans, tonight we're not going to go, no guests. We're just going to go calls. I'm going to come out and talk a little bit about what I saw upon the rewatch and some of the points I'm going to make. And then we'll open up the lines and let people have their say tonight and get their fill of, hey, give us your review. And then also, point us ahead, because I think Lynch is probably going to make an addition. So we'll kind of do those two things, kind of a look back and a look ahead to the trade deadline.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Plus, the Krug Show, make sure you're checking that. Larry is always on there giving you great information and great content, and at Sports Larry K. You're the best, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Greg.
You got it.
Thanks, Krug.